Let's bring Rosie Duffield into the conversation now. She's the Labour MP for Canterbury. Hello, Rosie. Look, I'm grateful for you speaking to me because you've not spoken to anybody, any journalist, since this bizarre situation that you found yourself in with regard to your alleged anti-Semitism. Let's just talk the audience through this story. Graham Linehan, who is the creator of Father Ted, tweeted the following in response to a story about Eddie Izzard, in which Eddie Izzard was quoted saying, "I'm a trans superhero, but if I'd lived in Nazi Germany, I'd have been murdered for it." Graham Linehan just captured that quote and said, "Ah, yes, the Nazis, famously bigoted against straight white men with blonde hair." You liked that tweet initially. That was March the 22nd, 2023. But then 3 days later, you unliked it.
Yeah.
And why did you unlike it?
I think there was already a load of pile-ons by people like Ash Sarkar, the usual suspects who pile on me all the time on Twitter.
Reporter.
Yeah, and I just thought this is attracting too much stuff and it's been really misconstrued, so I'll unlike it to be, you know, not controversial.
Then after you unlike it, you get contacted by your whip, the Labour MP Chris Elmore, who tells you to unlike it. You say you have unliked it.
Yeah.
The next thing you know, you're being threatened with deselection.
Not quite.
Right.
I mean, the whole sort of disciplinary... At the time, my whip, who was really lovely, was just saying there was controversy going on and that people had started to complain about it. And, you know, poor chap, he's lovely, but he's just the messenger. He was just saying, look, you need to know what's going on. And then he said this process will probably start. He didn't know what was happening. A few days later, I got sort of official notices that I was being investigated and there was a disciplinary. But it's not for a while that you know what the charges are. And then I got sort of the charge sheet and anti-Semitism, and I just sort of thought it was a bit of a joke.
I mean, let's be devil's advocate. You could say that, I suppose, equating the trans movement in any way to sort of the Holocaust, or indeed mentioning Nazis, it is unsavoury. The Jewish community don't like it because they say that it kind of lessens the impact of what happened during the Holocaust. So we can understand that. We could even say perhaps that Linehan has been misjudged. We can see also what he's trying to say here. He's saying, come on, Eddie, you're not a victim of persecution just because you're trans.
Graham Linehan is a satirist. You know, I used to write satire before I got to be an MP, and I recognised that he was taking the pee out of someone who essentially was in the privileged position of being the very person that the Nazis described as being an ideal, a tall, blonde, straight, white man. And I thought that there was so much
Although he claims that he wants to be called she at times, but he is still male.
Trans person. But, you know, we didn't use that language, and the Nazis certainly didn't use that language, and I thought it was really, really tasteless to put himself in a situation where Jews and gay people and Roma travellers and the disabled were persecuted, and he doesn't come into those categories, as far as I'm aware.
I mean, the anti-Semitism charge is particularly interesting in your case because you've been a vocal supporter of Jews. In fact, the Jewish Chronicle's editor, Stephen Pollard, said this about you. As editor of the Jewish Chronicle, I spent years after Corbyn became Labour leader fighting the party's anti-Semitism. Most Labour MPs were either complicit in it or said nothing to upset party members. Rosie Duffield was one of the very few who refused to be cowed by the party's Jew haters. Now, it strikes me, I don't know how you feel. You've made an enemy of the left because you've been anti-Corbyn. You've made an enemy of the left because you have questioned trans ideology. So is your suspicion that you're just being forced out of the party in any...
I suspect that it isn't about anti-Semitism because anyone just has to Google me and realise that my record on that is exemplary. And I've never had an apology for the kind of 3 or 4 years of absolute hatred I received from the left wing of the party for standing up against anti-Semitism. It was horrendous. There were female MPs mostly that were deselected that found that they couldn't carry on. It was so awful. I'm not Jewish, so it wasn't as bad for me. But I got so much abuse for standing up for my Jewish colleagues, and I've never had any kind of apology or understanding about that.
No, standing up for women. I mean, I asked you the last time I interviewed you, which was quite months ago, have you had a conversation with Keir Starmer about...
Absolutely not, no. We last spoke in September 2021.
2021?
Yeah, just before our conference. There was a big controversy about me liking a tweet again about women not having... Only women had cervixes or something. And no, we haven't had a conversation.
So what's your analysis of Starmer in this whole situation? You know, you haven't been supported on your views trying to stand up for women in the face of what you claim is sort of quite extreme trans activism, because I know you've had a lot of problems on social media. Now there's this talk of deselecting you because you're, quotes, anti-Semitic. He must know, if he's led the charge against anti-Semites in the Labour Party, who's on his side and who isn't.
You would have thought so. And we had a recent controversial vote, and I didn't break the whip on that issue because, you know, I was broadly supportive of the leadership. So it is a bit strange. I mean, he would say, if you were to ask him, that he couldn't get involved in disciplinary matters and that he couldn't sort of interrupt this system. But it goes to the NEC, our National Executive Committee, who are overall in charge of deciding what happens to MPs under this selection. And some of the people that complain about me constantly have representatives on that NEC. So the LGBT Labour group, who absolutely hate me and want me to be thrown out.
I mean, are you
influential, very influential?
Are you genuinely sort of afraid you're going to be turfed out of the Labour Party?
I hope not. But the ultimate destination of any disciplinary process could be that an MP is, you know, removed from the whip.
So what's your message to Starmer on this?
It would be really nice to have some support at some point. It really, really would be nice to have a conversation to understand what he thinks about all of this and to understand if he's going to support women more vocally, who now, in my case, I line up with the party's change of policy. So I don't really understand what I'm supposed to have done so wrong. I mean, that wasn't an anti-Semitic tweet, and I withdrew my like in case it offended anyone, but all of my Jewish friends. And the reason I think this probably got out, this story, is because I've had to, as part of the case that's been going on for 9 months, I've had to approach people to give me statements, Jewish friends and allies in the Lords, in the Commons and in bodies like the Board of Deputies, to write a statement supporting me and to say that I'm not anti-Semitic. So I suspect that's where this story came from.
What confuses me about it is we've got Keir Starmer on the front of the Sunday Telegraph today and inside writing an op-ed where he's channeling his inner Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah, that was a surprise.
Well, what's your reaction to that?
I've already had a few emails. I've got old mining villages in my part of Kent and it's not going down too well so far. So, I mean, I need to read the article properly because I'm sure it wasn't just about...
Well, it was basically saying, I can summarise it for you because I read it this morning, you know, we can sort out Brexit and we can sort out immigration, and actually, you know, the aspiration that Thatcher brought in the early 80s is something that we should emulate because the country's going to hell in a handcart, a little bit like the winter of discontent, and I'm the man to save it.
OK, well, I guess that's a good message broadly, but I think...
But the Thatcher thing isn't going to go down well with the left.
He perhaps could have said it without mentioning that particular
But why do you think he's mentioning Thatcher?
I don't know. I'd have to ask him. But, I mean, I guess it is the aspirational, maybe the white van man sort of the past. Perhaps as he's talking about home ownership and things like that. But there are people who are already not impressed who have emailed me, so...
I mean, do you have confidence in his leadership? I ask you because... From a personal perspective, you've not spoken to this guy since 2021, and I think of all Labour MPs, you have had a particularly rough ride with the opposition you've had from the trans movement, and indeed now with this.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice to know that he's got the back of MPs who have this kind of thing. It's not nice. We get a lot of abuse. Women get a lot of abuse. We're getting a lot of abuse over the Middle East crisis on either side.
Yes.
So it would be nice to feel that we're more sort of a together group, that he feels that he's maybe supporting a bit more broadly.
You mentioned earlier about, you know, being almost cancelled for retweeting about the fact that men can't have cervixes. Yeah. Are we confident that Starmer now knows whether or not a woman can have a penis or not?
I hope so. Yeah, I mean, the fact that the party came out with a policy in the summer of saying that we don't support self-ID,
yes,
that was a good sign. I still haven't had anyone talking to me about that in the party. I don't know how they get to the policy decisions, but nobody's spoken to me about that. So I guess we're going in the right direction on that.
And is there a timeline on what might happen in this particular case for you?
I have no idea. I mean, the discipline list, the list of MPs who are being disciplined, most of them, as everyone will know, there's some sort of cloud about possible sexual harassment or, you know, sometimes racism or things that they shouldn't have said in public. And most of them that I know have been given some kind of broad timeline. With my own particular process, I haven't been given a timeline.
Why is that?
8 months. I've no idea. It's a process that I've never come across in any other organisation, and it's kind of supposed to be independent and transparent, and it's neither of those things.
Do you have any idea, like, who is leading this against you? I mean, without necessarily naming...
Yeah, I mean, I've seen screenshots of particular Labour-affiliated societies organising against
Labour societies like whom?
LGBT Labour.
Ah.
I'm not saying they're behind this particular thing, maybe, but they certainly organise against me.
And anyone within the leadership or the Lotto leader's office?
There's a big sort of crossover between staff in Keir's office, staff, people on the NEC, people who are in LGBT Labour. They all kind of know each other. They're all sort of London-based, and they all possibly don't necessarily like me. I don't know.
Has being a Labour MP lived up to the expectation for you?
I came here to do a job. I came to Westminster to do a job to represent my constituents, to fight against things like the two-child limit that I'm really opposed, to fight back in the day against Brexit because my constituency is so close to Europe and our take on it is so different to lots of the other cities in the UK. I didn't come here to be distracted by these internal rows constantly, and it's really disappointing, actually.
Rosie Duffield, thank you very much indeed for sharing your story this morning.